My uncle left his fortune to the nephew who deserves it most, so I made sure I was the only one left. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in October, crisp autumn air filtering through my apartment window as I tore open the envelope with trembling fingers. My uncle had passed away 3 weeks prior, and nobody expected him to leave behind anything substantial given his modest lifestyle and quiet demeanor throughout our family gatherings. The man who always wore the same brown cardigan and drove a beat-up Honda Civic had apparently been sitting on a fortune worth over $2 million, accumulated through decades of smart investments and frugal living that none of us ever suspected. The will was straightforward in its complexity, stating that his entire estate would go to whichever nephew proved himself most deserving over the course of the next 6 months. There were 5 of us in total, all ranging in age from 25 to 38, and each carrying our own baggage and circumstances that might influence his posthumous decision. The lawyer explained that our uncle had left detailed instructions about how this evaluation would work, including monthly check-ins with a private investigator who would monitor our actions and report back to the estate executor. I sat in my cramped studio apartment that night, staring at the peeling wallpaper and water stains on the ceiling, calculating just how much $2 million could change my life. My student loans alone totaled nearly $60,000, and I had been working double shifts at a warehouse just to keep up with rent and basic expenses. The thought of financial freedom felt like a distant dream that had suddenly materialized within reach, but only if I could somehow outshine my cousins who each had their own compelling reasons for deserving the inheritance. My strategy began forming immediately, rooted in the understanding that I needed to eliminate the competition rather than simply excel myself. The first target was my cousin who had always been the family golden boy, graduating summa cum laude from an Ivy League school and landing a prestigious position at a consulting firm. His success had always overshadowed the rest of us during family gatherings, and I knew the investigator would likely view his achievements favorably when making recommendations to the executor. The opportunity presented itself during Thanksgiving dinner at my aunt's house, where tensions were already running high due to everyone knowing about the inheritance situation. My successful cousin had been drinking heavily throughout the evening, something that had become increasingly common since his recent divorce, and I watched him fumble with his car keys as he prepared to leave. Instead of intervening or offering him a ride, I discreetly followed him to the parking lot and used my phone to record him getting behind the wheel while clearly intoxicated. The video found its way to his employer through an anonymous tip, and within 2 weeks he had been terminated for conduct unbecoming of the firm's values. His drinking problem became more pronounced after losing his job, and soon he was making increasingly desperate phone calls to family members asking for money and displaying the kind of erratic behavior that would definitely not impress an investigator tasked with identifying the most deserving heir. My second cousin proved more challenging to handle, as he had built a solid reputation as a community volunteer and was actively involved in several charitable organizations. His weakness, however, lay in his tendency to exaggerate his contributions and take credit for work that others had accomplished. I spent several weeks documenting instances where he had misrepresented his role in various projects, gathering testimonies from other volunteers who had witnessed his embellishments firsthand. The carefully compiled evidence made its way to the boards of directors at 2 different nonprofits, resulting in his removal from leadership positions and a tarnished reputation that would certainly reflect poorly in any background investigation. His anger and protestations of innocence only made him appear more unstable, and I watched with satisfaction as he gradually isolated himself from the family through his increasingly paranoid accusations about sabotage. The third cousin had always struggled with financial responsibility, living paycheck to paycheck despite having a decent income due to his compulsive spending habits and poor decision-making. I realized that his downfall didn't require any direct intervention on my part, but rather a gentle nudge in the wrong direction at the right moment. When he mentioned wanting to invest in cryptocurrency during a family barbecue, I enthusiastically supported his plan and even helped him research various high-risk opportunities. His natural tendency toward impulsive financial decisions took care of the rest, and within 3 months he had lost his savings, maxed out his credit cards, and was facing potential bankruptcy. The stress of his financial situation led to problems at work, relationship issues with his girlfriend, and a general spiral that made him appear completely unsuitable for managing a substantial inheritance. My fourth and final cousin presented the most complex challenge because he was genuinely a good person who had overcome significant obstacles in his life. He had struggled with addiction in his 20s, but had been clean for over 5 years, building a stable life and maintaining steady employment while also mentoring others who were dealing with similar issues. His story of redemption and personal growth would likely resonate strongly with anyone evaluating potential heirs. The solution came to me during a family gathering where he mentioned feeling overwhelmed by work stress and having trouble sleeping. I began casually mentioning how much prescription medication had helped me during difficult periods, sharing stories about friends who had found relief through various pills and treatments. Over several conversations, I gradually normalized the idea of using medication to cope with stress, always careful to frame it as temporary assistance rather than dependency. When he finally asked if I knew anyone who might be able to help him get something for anxiety without going through the hassle of multiple doctor visits, I connected him with someone I knew who dealt in prescription medications. The transition from occasional use to regular dependency happened faster than I had anticipated, and within 2 months he was missing work, neglecting his responsibilities, and displaying the same destructive patterns that had derailed his life years earlier. The investigators' monthly reports painted an increasingly clear picture of four cousins who had each experienced significant setbacks and personal failures over the 6-month evaluation period. Meanwhile, my own life had been carefully curated to demonstrate stability, responsibility, and moral character. I had volunteered at a local food bank, taken evening classes to improve my skills, maintained perfect attendance at work, and even started a small savings account to show financial responsibility. The irony wasn't lost on me that in order to prove myself most deserving of my uncle's fortune, I had systematically destroyed the lives of 4 family members who had once been close to me. Each success in my campaign of sabotage felt hollow, accompanied by guilt and anxiety about the consequences of my actions. Sleep became increasingly elusive as I replayed the various manipulations and betrayals, wondering if my uncle would have approved of the methods I had used to secure his legacy. The revelation came during the final week of the evaluation period, when I discovered a letter hidden in my uncle's desk that the executor had apparently overlooked. The handwriting was unmistakably his, and the contents made my stomach drop as I read his actual intentions for the inheritance test. He had known exactly what would happen when he created the competition between his nephews, predicting that our worst instincts would emerge under pressure and that we would likely turn against each other in pursuit of his money. The letter revealed that he had been disappointed by our family's materialism and lack of genuine connection during his lifetime, feeling that we only visited him when we needed something or wanted to maintain appearances. His true plan had been to donate the entire fortune to charity, after watching us prove that none of us were worthy of inheriting his life's work. The 6-month evaluation period was merely his way of documenting our moral failures for posterity, ensuring that his final judgment would be based on concrete evidence rather than assumptions. But the most devastating discovery was a hidden camera system that he had installed throughout his house, capturing every family gathering and conversation that had taken place during the evaluation period. The footage clearly showed my manipulations and schemes, including several conversations where I had explicitly discussed my plans to undermine my cousin's chances of winning the inheritance. The evidence was comprehensive and damning, leaving no doubt about my culpability in orchestrating their various downfalls. The final twist came when I realized that my uncle had anticipated even this possibility, including provisions in his will that would automatically transfer ownership of all evidence to law enforcement if certain conditions were met. The statute of limitations had not yet expired on several of the actions I had taken, including the anonymous tip about my cousin's drunk driving and the prescription medication scheme that had led to my other cousin's relapse. As I sat in my apartment that final night before the inheritance decision was to be announced, I understood that my uncle had orchestrated a perfect trap. He had dangled the promise of financial freedom in front of us, knowing that our greed and desperation would drive us to reveal our true characters. The most deserving nephew would have been the one who refused to participate in the competition altogether, recognizing that family relationships were more valuable than money. The phone call from the executor confirmed what I already knew: the entire estate would indeed go to charity, with a detailed explanation of why none of the nephews had proven themselves worthy of the inheritance. But more importantly, I realized that my uncle's true gift hadn't been his money at all, but rather the harsh lesson about the corrupting influence of greed and the importance of maintaining our moral compass even when faced with temptation. The legal consequences of my actions began unfolding within days, as investigators followed up on the evidence my uncle had carefully preserved. The irony was that in my desperation to secure his fortune, I had not only lost the inheritance, but also faced potential criminal charges for some of the methods I had employed. The family relationships I had destroyed in pursuit of money were gone forever, leaving me more isolated and financially struggling than I had been before the whole ordeal began. Looking back, I realized that my uncle had known exactly what he was doing when he structured his will the way he did. He had given us all an opportunity to prove our character under pressure, and we had collectively failed his test in spectacular fashion. The most deserving nephew would have been the one who recognized that no amount of money was worth destroying family bonds and betraying the people who had once cared about him.